Welcome to In Fearless Conversation, a podcast from 261 Fearless, where every discussion is an opportunity to shape the future. I'm your host, Kim Chaffee, and together we'll explore any topic that impacts a woman's quality of life, from leadership and personal growth to health and financial security. Join me and discover how a fearless conversation can shape the future you deserve. Welcome to today's episode of In Fearless Conversation. I'm really excited for today's episode. If you haven't noticed, women's sports are growing at an unprecedented pace. We're seeing more women's sporting events being broadcast on TV. More and more women's sports bars are popping up. And today we're going to dig deep into this, and we're going to nerd out a little bit because I'm sitting down with sports economist and assistant professor of sport analytics, Keri Rubenstein, to explore everything shaping the future of women's sports. We'll talk about a range of topics from fan engagement and athlete opportunities to the research driving decision-making across the industry. Keri shares why the rise of women's sports is one of the most compelling stories in sports today and why understanding the numbers behind this movement matters. Had this been a thing like 30 years ago when I went to college, I surely would have been studying it. I'm sad it wasn't, but here we are. I suspect if you're listening to this podcast, then the same might be true for you to some degree. So let's get into it and nerd out together and hear what Keri has to share with us. Hello, Keri. Welcome to In Fearless Conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited. Okay, I think that I'm going to nerd out a lot in this conversation, I feel like, because women's sports and kind of analyzing it and everything that has to do with women's sports is totally up my alley. I think if I knew something like this existed before I went to college, it probably would have been something I would have been interested in. Granted, that was like almost 30 years ago, so who knows if there was even anything happening with women's sports analytics then. But I digress. Let's start with you introducing yourself to our audience and explaining exactly what a sports economist is or what a sports economist does.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Dr. Keri Rubenstein. I am a professor of sport analytics at Syracuse University. I'm in the Falk College of Sport. My path to get to my dream job that I'm currently living right now was kind of windy. I started off as an economics major at Southern Methodist University. My dad's an economist, so I kind of came by it naturally, and kind of found myself in graduate school pursuing a PhD at West Virginia University, and I was studying under some pretty well-known sports economists, that have published some of them, the papers that everybody knows in our world. And so I kind of didn't realize it at the time, but I was getting a pretty close-up view into like what a sports economist is and does. And I thought, this is pretty cool. I knew what other economists do, and there are so many different things that economists do. I mean, most of the time when I tell people that I'm an economist, they ask me like, how can I make money on the stock market? Like that's not not what I do, at least.
Yeah.
So I'm more thinking about like how people make decisions about scarce resources, and that can just be anything, really, when you think about it like that. And so for a long time, I was teaching principles of microeconomics to many students. I was at West Virginia University, then I went to North Dakota State University up in Fargo. And in my early 20s, I kind of received some bad career advice, as I think many of us do. And I unfortunately took it, which is, unfortunately many of us do. And I was told that if I wanted to study sports, I'd be a sports economist and think about the sports industry as my setting for all of the economic questions I wanted to ask. That would be something that I would need to wait until later in my career. I was told that's like an old guy's game. That was literally what I was told. And I thought,
wow,
that's annoying. And I took it to heart, and I was teaching my supply and demand graphs to my freshmen, and I was doing fine, and I just kind of had all these ideas about women's sports, and I'm a fan of women's sports. I'm a lifelong fan of sports, of all sports, and I kind of just felt frustrated because I had all these ideas for papers and things I wanted to write, and I didn't see anybody else writing them, and I was like, there's got to be something here that like I don't want to wait until I'm older to do this, right? And then I heard about what was happening at Syracuse. I heard that they were starting this Falk College of Sport, which is like the first of its kind. I knew there was a group that had the sport analytics program at Syracuse was born out of our sport management department by some economists. Dr. Rodney Paul is like the director, visionary leader extraordinaire for us. And they were building a group, and they said, we need more data scientists, more economists that to kind of help us flesh out this team. And so I was like, I'd love to join, and I'd like to start working on what I want to work on now. And now I'm here. So
That's amazing.
It literally like pinched me all the time. So I came to Syracuse in the fall of 2024. So I just wrapped up my second year here. And so, and when you said, I wish this existed when I was in college, it didn't exist when I was in college either. The program started in 2016 out of the sport management department. That was like the first kind of year that Dr. Paul got things off the ground, but we didn't become our own standalone department until the Falk College was launched as the Falk College of Sport last fall, so 2025. So this is brand new stuff here, and a lot of other schools are trying to do this as well, but Syracuse really is the leader and the first to kind of think about sports analytics as a career. How can we think of sports economics and sports analytics as like a separate field, not just subfields of kind of larger departments, and thinking about it as like a career path for our students. And I wish I got to do this I mean, it's cool to help our students pursue their dreams,
Yeah, that's so cool. So, okay, the Fall College of Sport is new. It's a newly launched program. Tell us a little bit about that program and what exactly a student who, well, actually, I just talked to two students that are part of the Falk School that were interns for us. I just talked to them last week for an episode of the podcast. So,
oh, great.
That episode is coming in a few weeks. And they had, of course, nothing but wonderful things to say about their experience. And one had actually just graduated, and one just finished her first year. So it was really cool to see their different perspectives and their different experiences. But I'm curious, you said this is kind of the first of its kind, this first program of its kind. So what does those study look like? What does their programming look like?
Right. So we're kind of building off of the existing infrastructure, the sport management department and the nutrition and exercise science departments that are now kind of called human performance under Falk College. They've existed at Syracuse for a long time. So the sport analytics, we're the new kids, but we're kind of an offshoot from sport management, now our own standalone department. So those kind of academic units have come together because it's all about sport over the life cycle, from your whole life, thinking about participation, not just the pro athletes, not just the college athletes, but thinking about, everyday people that like to participate in sports, right? So we think about youth participation all the way through elderly people that are still running and all these kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where our exercise science and nutrition specialists are like so like the best for that. And they do so much cool research. So it's kind of fun because I'm used to being more in like the business school environment. And now I'm thinking more about just like the human aspect of everything. So this has been a really fun group to work with. Everybody's great. And so, those kind of 3-4 tracks kind of coming together. So our students, they can major in the human performance with the nutrition or the exercise science focus. And then we have the sport management, sport analytics. And, of course, they're able to pair these with our like wonderful communications and like Newhouse School and Whitman and all the wonderful things that Syracuse has to offer to kind of put together like their perfect degree to pursue whatever their goal is. So, if you want to be a GM or you want to be a coder doing Moneyball things, or if you want to be trying to introduce new like health interventions to make athletes perform better, like all of these kinds of things, and bringing data into all of it. And also I'm grateful that like a lot of it has a women's sports focus as well, because that's kind of something that we have a huge gap in the academic literature. Like there's a ton of research about men, and we just are
Yes.
trying to catch up and get, just good, solid research done about what's going on with women athletes. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so let's talk about that research. What is it that you are looking into? What are the things that you're researching? What's exciting you?
Yeah, so I mean, best part about being a sports economist is, like I said, if it's a really vague definition, humans making decisions in the face of scarcity, like I get to think about everything. But I really focus mostly on like the labor markets aspect of things. So kind of how free agents move, any kind of salary negotiations, all these kinds of things, which are really timely right now, especially if we're thinking about like the WNBA and the NWSL, these pro leagues
Sure.
that are really going through pretty transformative like institutional change. So it gives me a ton to think about. So a lot of it is like, what are the kinds of considerations for these athletes to, get to the next level, move, from team to team? Are they playing year round in the overseas leagues when we're talking about the women's professional basketball? So that's like one of the things. And like that feeds into, well, if they're playing year round, how does that affect their career longevity, their injury
Right.
risk, their how well they play? Like, some of the European leagues are very physical, and so do the women who play over there come back to the W different, and so these are the kinds of
Right.
questions that I think about, and it's obviously a unique setting for these athletes compared to the men, so it gives me like a whole different set of questions to kind of think about, because the NBA players don't have to pack up after the finals this week and move to Turkey for the off season. That's not what they do, but that's what the women
Right.
do. So it's a little different. Yeah.
And that's because of salary differences,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this new CBA, and I mean, it's all over the news, but it's been transformative and, increasing salaries. I mean, just an immense amount. So we're expecting there to be a big drop in international participation and perhaps some of the best international players wanting to come to the States to play in the W. So all of these kind of
Right.
player flows, migration, all these things are going to be top of mind for me going
Lots
on.
of things to research, lots
Yeah,
of new things.
it's good. Yeah, very busy.
Yeah. Well, we've seen this huge growth in women's sports in the last, I mean, I don't know, five, like 10, 15-ish years.
Mhm.
I mean, I think women's sports in that time period, I mean, I grew up playing sports. So for me, it was kind of like, well, yeah, women play sports, no big deal. But, we look at Catherine Switzer, 1967, which wasn't that long ago, and women were not allowed to run a marathon. So, I mean, we've seen this increase in women's participation, and I think we're now seeing the media kind of catch up with this increase in participation. There's like women's sports bars kind of popping up all over the place. We were recently in Boston for the Boston Marathon, and they had a women's sports area specifically set up for women's sports. Actually, we were there, Para Maria in Boston, and it was so cool. Like it was these huge photos on the walls of big moments in women's sports. So I don't want to say it's having a moment because I feel like we've been kind of building to this place, but it seems like the world is kind of finally starting to catch up and take notice. What do you think has sparked this growth, this interest in women's sports more, and how does that impact women athletes?
Yeah, so you're dead on. It's been growing for a long time. And I think that like we're just kind of seeing this, I mean, it's a perfect storm of like several different factors all coming together kind of perfectly at once. So the first part of that is the participation, right? Like this is the fruits of Title IX. This is the fruits of all the things that have kind of been building to this point where like women play sports. Like that's not you know what I mean? Like that's just a thing now. And the fans have
Mm-hmm.
always been there. Like even, yeah, 10, 15 years ago, like attendance has never really been an issue. Like in-person attendance has never really been an issue for a lot of women's sports pro
Mm-hmm.
leagues in college. Like it's not really been the sticking point. It's the visibility through the media, right? And that's what you're
Sure.
picking up on. And so it's kind of it's a feedback loop. Or like if people aren't watching on TV, then we say that there is an interest in the stands, and then it kind of cycles through. But if we put it on TV, then more people will want to go to games. And so we're starting to see these like,
Right.
it's all connected. So social media was huge. 10 years ago, if you wanted to watch a WNBA game, for example, you had to like catch a Twitter stream and it was, and 10 years ago, most
Yeah.
people didn't know how to like cast it to their TVs. It was just like not accessible. And
Hmm.
now it's like, I just go into Prime and it's there. Like, you know what I mean? Or it's on any nationally televised. It's like all, almost all the games are there. It's very easy to be a fan. And so I think access, that drives demand too. If there are barriers, it's going to be hard. I mean, people, you have to be really hardcore to like wake up in the middle of the night to watch a Premier League game. You know what I mean? If
Sure.
you're, yeah, it's like, I mean, if you make it so that I have to like go, jump through a bunch of hoops and sign up for a bizarre streamer, like I'm probably not going to be a fan. And so I think just making it easier to watch drove that demand as well. And so you're starting to see the fruits of that. Those big TV deals that were signed in like 2019, at least in the that's kind of my area, but
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
all the other leagues are kind of doing the same thing. 2020 was big. I mean, even though it was the bubble, like they were on TV and no one was doing anything, so they kind of got a lot of fans there.
Right. Oh,
And then
interesting.
and then you also have like these superstars coming in. And I mean, there have always been superstars in the WNBA as someone who's watched like it's, but you have to say Caitlin Clark, you have to say Angel Reese, like these are names that brought them even more on the map. So it's like I said, it's the social media. The NIL has helped with the college athletes to build their brand so that when they go pro, it helps the pros. There's a lot of different things that are all feeding in at once. Plus, like just people are kind of getting, I don't know, maybe we can say that the culture is starting to change a little bit too. People are a little bit more accepting. I'm hopeful that that's the
Sure.
case as well. And so like all these things kind of coming together, we're starting to see just like it's not hopefully not just a fleeting moment, but it is a moment. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely building. So, what other trends are you seeing in your research that you feel are noteworthy? Is there like anything of the ripple effect of women gaining more visibility and opportunity in sport?
Yeah, so there's, I mean, going to be the salary benefits that we talked about before, but also we're starting to see like other, like growth in other sports. So I think they're positive spillovers from the success that we've seen in the WNBA and the NWSL. Like both of those leagues are doing great. So you're seeing the PWHL is taking off and they're doing very well. Like the Women's Hockey League, they're doing great.
Okay.
You're seeing the formation of professional volleyball. You're seeing the formation of professional rugby, professional lacrosse. Like there are pro
Hmm.
leagues now for a lot of sports that and then you see the media companies are getting on board and you start to think of instead of just saying we're going to invest in one league, it's like we're going to invest in women's sports. And so it's bleeding over to the individual sports, to the Olympic sports. Like you're starting to see this kind of like just I think the sponsorship opportunities and companies are starting to realize that this is like a real place to invest and that they're like you said, the sports bars, these women like at the Boston Marathon, like these companies knew that there was going to be benefits to this. And that's one of the most like surest votes of confidence to me as an economist. Like if the money's going that way, then people believe it's actually real. It's not just like for show and not because of a charity thing or it's the right thing to do. Like this is genuinely a good business
Hmm.
opportunity. And that is also very encouraging. So that's something that I'm starting to see. And so those are positive impacts and you're going to see that then bleed down into the academic world. So there's encouragement from academics to then study this, right? Which is going to get us better information, more access to data, because there's a big inequity right now in like data access and just like what's being collected. So all these pro leagues exist, but they're all trying their best to get good data for people like me. That
Right.
like, the NFL and NBA, they have plenty of infrastructure for that. So like that's kind of the next step. And also, you've got like all the kind of, there's negative stuff as well for these athletes, right? Like the bigger stage, the more criticism and all these
Sure.
kinds of things. There's tons of other things as well. But I think that like there are a lot more positives in the sense that like we're going to get more access to interest, funding, and data that will help us understand like women's health and performance differently. And I think that's like where I'm seeing the research heading now is that like people are just wanting to dive into like what is going on with the ACL tears. Like these are the kinds of questions
Right.
that like we just hadn't had maybe the funding or the interest from people or maybe even access to data or any of these kinds of things. It's just a shame. But now we're starting to talk about like, well, how are we designing shoes for women? Are they different than how we design shoes for men? I mean, lots of really interesting stuff is starting to come out. And I think it's because the spotlight has been turned to them and humans naturally are just like, okay, well, let's talk about what we're talking about. And it's
Right.
coming, finally getting through to the ivory tower of us. In maybe 5 to 10 years, we'll get some good papers because we work slow. But, but yeah.
Well, but that's part of it, right? Is the
Mhm.
careful like digging through of the data and the information. And I mean, the more information and data you have, then the longer it probably takes to sift through. And what I'm hearing you saying is like with this spotlight kind of putting itself on women's sports more, now we're asking all the questions that we kind of should have been asking a long time ago, right? And these are all
Absolutely.
questions that now can be explored because, like you said, money is necessary. I mean, it's a necessary evil, right?
Yeah,
And where the money goes is where, like, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, kind of, right? Like, where the money goes is
absolutely.
where the visibility will be. So, yeah, that's really interesting. I'm also wondering about the ripple effect in a different sense with the visibility aspect. And for me, I think about the ripple effect on young girls seeing more women's sports on TV and what that does for them. Can you just kind of speak a little bit about that? I know that might not be like your specific area, but just your thoughts.
No, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, there's absolutely a ton of research, but of course, we have to wait a little bit longer. But there's a ton of papers that are starting to hint at like what's happening with youth sport participation for young girls. And it's been on an upward trajectory for a while, but I think that we're starting to see even more of an uptick, and especially in the sports that are the most visible. And there are some, I think it's still early. It's a little
Yeah.
early for us to make any huge claims here. But it seems like some of the sports like volleyball and lacrosse that like are gaining traction and are kind of like they're complementary but also substitutable with like your softball, basketball, like just skill set stuff. And so I
Sure.
think trying to understand like where like girls are feeling like they have more choices, I think, in what sports they want to play if they want to have professional opportunities, and you're going more with just like what you like and like what you enjoy, and like and not thinking necessarily like basketball is the only way I'm going to be able to like get a job if I want or
Sure.
go to college or whatever. Like there are programs growing at the NCAA level and all this kind of stuff as well. So you're starting to see that there's like more opportunities. So you're seeing like I think girls are staying in sports longer. There's a lot of hope for that as well, and trying to figure out what
Mm-hmm.
interventions we can introduce, because that's another wonderful part about being a social scientist is we can try to inform policy and like make suggestions on like what we see has worked and what hasn't worked. And so yeah, role models historically in pretty much any setting have are helpful, right, to increase
Right.
participation and prolong it. And so if we can have great role models at the pro level and the college level for young girls, like that's everything. And again, these platforms, a lot of times, everyone feels a little weird about NIL sometimes, and I'm not going to necessarily go down that path right now, but it does give a platform for women athletes in a way that they haven't had, right? And like they become
Yeah.
household names pretty quickly if they know if they've got good brand management. And so that's something that will, I think, actually have a positive influence.
Yeah. So just explain what NIL is, just for
Oh yeah.
everybody who doesn't know.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Sorry. So it's name, image, and likeness. Excuse me. So,
Okay.
that is when like college athletes are able to be paid for like any use of their name, image, and likeness. So
Right.
that's how they're able to get brand sponsorships. You see now you know basketball players doing ads on their Instagrams and things like this. This is a way for them to get extra income, but it's also for them to get extra visibility. So if you
Okay.
have an algorithm like mine, like every other ad is a page breaker's ad. And so, that's going to be like but that's she started that in college, you know what I mean? And that's been building that
Right.
brain. So then when she gets to the next level, it's even bigger. And so you're starting to see high school students that are building their brands in anticipation of going to college. It's kind of,
Wow.
I mean, parents get a little freaked out about it. I get a little freaked out about it, but it is creating more visibility, and it's putting female athletes like on the same level as the male athletes kind of have always been. You know what I mean? If you think about
Sure.
like LeBron was like a household name, when he's 16. Like I think we should have these female athletes in high school that be our household names before they even, you know what I mean? Like I think we should be thinking
Sure.
about it like that. And that's to me is like the gains that are being made. And social media has allowed us to kind of bridge that gap a lot faster. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and I love the, like you were saying with social media, just I mean it's I think, 50-50, wonderful, beneficial, and not so much. But on the positive side of it, there we do have all of these powerful, strong women athletes. I'm thinking like Alona Mar from the U.S. rugby team. Like
100%.
she's such a fantastic role model for young girls, but also for women, like just
Yeah,
in
she inspires
general.
me.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so I think just having these women visible and out there and giving them having a platform is so impactful and inspiring for young girls, but I mean also for adult women who, I don't know. I feel like I was an athlete in high school and I loved, being an athlete and playing sports and being competitive and just the whole aspect of being part of a team. And then I went to college and I was a good athlete, but I wasn't good enough to be, an athlete in college. And so seeing women like this just kind of gives me, I don't want to say hope because that sounds a little bit grandiose. I don't know, strange, but it just kind of makes it like, oh yeah, I was an athlete. I still can be strong. I can still be an athlete, even though I'm not part of a team and I'm turning 45 next week. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so, I don't know. I just love seeing it all. But so, okay, speaking of visibility and things, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your research about Taylor Swift and the Kansas City Chiefs effect that you've done. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this was just a fun paper, but it's all just supply and demand, which is what I tell people, right? It's just there are many different ways that we can influence demand. We talked about access. Another way is just making it like, I guess this is another way of making it accessible, but making it be okay to like sports. And Taylor Swift was kind of this gateway for a lot of young girls that felt like football, like there wasn't a place for them in the NFL fandom. And it's like, no, it's actually quite okay and cool to like sports. And so this paper, we look at their announcement of their relationship to Taylor and Travis Kelce.
Travis.
Anyone who's not familiar, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know. I had to explain
I know.
NIL, but I don't know if I have to explain this one.
I agree.
But yeah, anyways, when they announced their relationship, it was kind of a surprise, or at least the date of like, her just like showing up to that Bears game week 3, like just out of the blue, right? And everyone was like, oh, this is real. This wasn't just like an internet rumor. And so you see this pretty sharp increase in viewership, in particular for the Kansas City Chiefs. And it is like a massive finding. And that was the biggest thing that for me as a researcher having to sell this, one, to my co-author, who is not a Swiftie. He's just
Oh,
a
no.
sports economist guy. No, he's not a Swiftie. He's just,
But sure.
Yeah. And then also to like the journal editor and reviewers, like, no, this is genuinely how big of an impact she had. I mean, it was like I don't know, like 4 million extra viewers per game, which is a lot of viewers. And like especially in these younger demographics. And so that is exactly what the NFL was hoping for, I think, to come from all of this. And I think it's funny, like sometimes all it takes is just to be like, yeah, no, it's totally fine to like this sport, and look how much fun she's having at the games and all these kinds of things. And you just see this huge influx of interest. And the paper was very fun to write. I got to talk about like the Taylor's boyfriend effect, basically. That was cool. That happened, which I never thought that as like an academic I would get to write about something that even my girlfriends from college were like, I get this one. Yeah.
That's so fun. I love it. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our time, and I have one last question for you. If we look ahead 10 years from now, what do you hope we'll be saying about women's sports that we can't necessarily say today?
Okay, yeah, I have a few answers to this one. This is I think about this all the time because, as I said, 2016, you'd have to watch the game on Twitter if you wanted to watch the WNBA, and now it's easy. I think in 10 years we'll be laughing about how much easier it is to access not just the most popular leagues, but all the leagues. And we won't have, I mean, women's sports bars are wonderful spaces. I go to them whenever I can, but I hope that in a future world, I can go to any sports bar and it's not like I
Sure.
have to ask to get the game on.
Right.
Things like that. But also, I think just from like the research perspective, I think that this gap in data access and data quality is going to shrink massively. There's going to be a better communication between industry and academics. And part of that comes from literally the students that I'm teaching at Syracuse are going to go get jobs at teams and leagues, and they're going to know what we need to do our jobs, right? And to help
Right.
each other and provide helpful feedback for them. And they're going to be working in the ground, like on the ground, like, collecting data, but also using the data to help their teams win or help their leagues make money or whatever their kind of path is, right? And so
Yeah.
they're going to be informing the decision makers right now who are kind of just like, I don't know, what kind of data do you want us to collect? And so I think we're starting to have those
Sure.
conversations, and it's going to help all of us just make the sport better, more fun to watch, more accessible, safer, all these kinds of things. And it's going to bleed into every other kind of aspect. And so I think that's going to be a big one. I also think that we're going to see that the NCAA has like a kind of a mission to introduce more women's sports programs into, at the D1, D2, D3 level, these emerging sports. So you're seeing flag
Okay.
football for women as like a new NCAA sponsored sport. Very cool, right?
That's
Women's
very
rugby
cool.
is going to be an NCAA sport. Like, thank you, Alona Maher, for that one. Because I'm going to say,
Right.
like, pretty much like a lot of that is obviously girls were playing rugby, but now like there's serious interest in like playing it at that level. And then of course there's the pro league as well. But like having that NCAA bridge is incredibly important. So I'm
Right.
thinking like we're not going to be talking about, oh, we broke a record for attendance or, oh, we broke a record for viewership. We don't talk about that with the men's sports.
Right.
I don't think we're not going to be thinking about, it's just going to be normal. That's my hope.
Okay.
And then my last hope is because I think one of the things that's happening now, at least in the sports economics world, is a lot of our papers will compare the NWSL with the MLS or WNBA with the NBA, and we'll compare. And I think it's an apples and oranges comparison most of the time. So I'm hoping that people will want to write papers or do research in women's sports just because it's sports and it's interesting, and we don't have to do these comparisons as much when they're not necessary.
Sure.
I would never write a paper about the NBA and be told, hey, you need to compare this to the W, but when I do the reverse. And so I hope that that is something that I don't get as a comment when I present my papers and all those kinds of things, just because I'm like, it's a sport and it's interesting and I can ask an interesting question and I don't need to necessarily have it in the context of the men's side or in relation to, and we can just study what we study. So that's my long hope, hopefully sooner than 10 years from now, if I keep
Sure.
keep preaching at conferences that I don't need to do that. That will hopefully change soon.
A big thank you to Keri for joining us today and sharing her insights and expertise and her passion for the future of women's sports. Today's conversation is a powerful reminder that the future of women's sports is bright. As Keri shared, the talent and passion and fans have always been there. Now the visibility and the investment and the opportunities are growing in exciting ways. And every new athlete, every new fan, every new research study and opportunity, it helps move the game forward, and it creates possibilities and opportunities for the next generation of girls and women. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of In Fearless Conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Please give us a rating and review on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. That helps us reach new listeners. And continue empowering women through running and education. Until next time, keep showing up, keep moving forward, and remember, running is just the beginning.